that's enjoyed by early citizens of Jackson County. And Bonnie brought all of these items, these artifacts from the main museum, so this is the first time I've seen them, so I won't probably be able to answer any questions about them, other than what is obvious. So if you'd like to hold up that. This is a swimsuit, the trunks that was worn by Emil, and then behind on the chair is a picture showing that. And then also on the chair, that's the rest of the swimsuit outfit. At first I looked at that and I thought that was for a woman. And if you notice on the side there, it's kind of cool. I don't know if that's embroidered on the side with the diver. I thought that was kind of neat. It's sort of a knit material. But do please come and look at these at the end of the presentation.
Very heavy.
It is very heavy, yeah. And so it shows that picture. I don't know, you probably can't zoom in to get that, or?
Should we pass?
Oh yeah, we could pass the picture around. That's a good idea. I guess I just didn't realize that was the attire, that men had worn. Then next to it here on the stand, those have to be ice skates. So at that time, you would have just fastened those onto your boots or shoes. And that would have been quite a popular pastime years ago. And then we have a lot of the baseball uniform that has the bear on it. And that's also kind of a heavy material too, isn't it? So maybe, would that be wool? Does anybody know what those are made out of? Does it
feel like?
Has the number 12 on the back, so not really sure who that belongs to. And then the glove that's on the chair, I don't know if that's the same vintage as what that jersey is. I know that they went through a lot of transitions, if you've ever been to like a baseball museum. But that was one of the early ones. Obviously made of leather. And then also on the chair we have a couple of croquet balls. Raise your hand if you ever played croquet. Yeah, did you like it? Yeah, I thought it was kind of fun. And then we also have some other items, some props that go, some mallets that go along with the balls.
Cool. Sue, what did you say were ice skates? I missed that?
I think right here on this music stand.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But they clip on the shoe.
Sure, yeah.
And then we have a uniform from Lamont. And I don't know, Allison, did you want to read what that says on there?
This uniform was worn by Orland Wathier in the early 1950s. He lived on a farm by Lamont, Iowa. He loved sports his entire life. After leaving Lamont, he enlisted in the Navy. After the Navy, he went to college and became a social worker for Catholic Charities. He was not only a catcher for the Lamont Baseball Club, but also a catcher of people in hard times. He lived from 1932 to 2016.
Oh, so he's not been gone that long then. We also have a hockey stick and a hockey puck on this chair in front of. And there is a name on that hockey puck, but I don't know if that's just like the name of the manufacturer, or if people had their names put on the pucks.
Lester Patrick official hockey puck.
Okay, so that was probably a brand at that time. Oh, and we actually had some more ice skates on the floor. What about those? And those are pretty heavy. Not too bad. I don't know if those are men's or women's.
I would say men's.
They're pretty big.
Oh, yeah, they're pretty big. They are pretty big. Women had much smaller feet back then, I think, too. And then we have a tennis racket. Don't really know much on that, on the age. But it doesn't look like those have really changed that much over the years. And then we have a suitcase. It says Patty Taylor on it. And do you want to read what's on the front of that?
Original roller skates and case belonged to Patty Taylor Greenwood, skated at the Makokata skating rink in the 1940s. Larry Hager sign painting painted her name on the case.
Cute.
I remember when I was doing that presentation on the telephone operator, there was a lady, I think it was Nora Matik's cousin that was in the roller derby. Okay, so those, yeah. I didn't realize I could.
Oh, there's even a paper in here about instructions for the roller skates.
Oh, it is, okay. Because it was probably fairly new at that time. How many of you enjoyed roller skating? I think, is that everything that's over there?
The golf clubs.
Oh, okay. Set of old golf clubs. And again, not sure who those belong to at all, but
Wooden shaft.
all with wooden shafts. I don't know if that's a complete set or no. No? I don't call. So. Okay, sports enjoyed by early citizens of Jackson County. So I got my information from an article that was in the newspaper, and I'll tell you more about that later. But just to let you know, these are what she listed in the article. So obviously there's a lot more sports that I'm not going to go into. And then there's one at the end that I think is kind of questionable as to if that was a sport, but that was written in the article. When the weather was warm, many felt that it was a halcyon time for moonlight excursions, for rides over our beautiful prairies, when the ladies, like Shakespeare's fairies, can dance their ringlets in the whistling wind, in full glee of maidenhood, according to the Sentinel, August 21st, 1856. Buggy riding. The fast riders sometimes indulged, as may be surmised, as in 1870, drivers of fine steppers were warned that the speed regulations in Makokata would be more rigidly enforced. So Ella Taylor, my grandmother, is shown standing on the running board in the white dress. Driving continued to be a favorite pastime. Shown is the 1912 Ford, the first car in Andrew. The passengers were Frank Siegel, Clarence Johnson, and Ora Littlefield. So I'm not sure who the driver is. I don't know if anyone recognizes this picture that would know that. In the early 1930s, the city fathers of Hurstville were upset over the speed with which cars sped through their community on the way to and from Makokata. So they hired farmer Floyd Carter Nims to halt the speeders and bring them to what was then Hurstville's mayor court for the assessment of fines. Robert Jones also served later in this capacity as a young man using a motorcycle. Davenport and Dubuque motorists warned that it was a speed trap. Had anyone heard about that before? I guess that was kind of new to me. Sleigh rides and sleighing parties were popular in the winter. However, the expense of hiring a horse and sleigh was detrimental to the full enjoyment of this exhilarating pastime. Bonnie said that there are some things to have to do with sleigh riding at the museum, but she couldn't get to those. So. The Sentinel in 1856 pointed out that some had to follow Franklin's plan for sleighing, to sit in a corner, put the feet in a tub of cold water for 1/2 hour, and have someone jingle the bell. This plan saves time, money, and horse flesh, with the only result taking hold, it stated. Cutters, hung, sleighs, sleds, bobs, jumpers, and hand sleds were used. and sleigh bells were heard all day and until late at night. Sleighing parties to neighboring towns and farm homes were popular. Okay, so I'm going to test your knowledge here. What is a pung? Does anybody know? I didn't know, I had to look it up. A sleigh with a box-shaped body. What is a cutter?
It's a form of a sleigh.
A form of a sleigh, but what makes it different?
I think it's higher up.
Higher up? A lightweight, horse-drawn sleigh that usually holds no more than 2 people. So it is higher up in the air, but quite different from the box sleigh. Keeping warm when sleigh riding with foot warmers, shown as an 1800s antique soapstone foot warmer. The soapstone released the heat very slowly. It did not crack like other stones when heated repeatedly, whereas metal absorbs heat but releases it rapidly. Native Americans understood that soapstone holds heat extremely well. They carved bowls out of it and cooked food in them. So I recently read that with the high cost of heating, recently soapstone foot warmers are making a comeback and can be found on the internet for purchase. The stone was warmed by the fire, then put on the floor of the sleigh. Wrap yourself up in blankets and the heat keeps you warm from head to toe. These were also used by many people to warm their beds at night. Staying warm. People would tuck comforters, quilts, or blankets around them and bring umbrellas to protect them from the freezing rains. Fur set and fur trimming made of beaver, fox, bear, and marten were common. I was going to look that up about the marten. So is that like bird trim? Marten? Is a marten? I mean, I know they're birds. Barb, do you think that that's what they use?
Yeah, they're animals. They're animals.
They're animals, but for trim, I guess a bird.
Yeah, they're like a mink.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would be big enough. In the 17th century, muffs were used by both men and women. However, in the 19th century, muffs were considered an essential accessory only for women and ranged from large down muffs to small fur or velvet ones, matching the trim on a woman's dress. Over 100 years ago, women would tuck a miniature hot water bottle inside their fur muffs to keep their hands warm. Poorer people would use heated stones or put potatoes in their pockets. So I wondered, like, if they did that with the potatoes to keep warm then, they probably...
Well, Floyd Peters, Kim and Karen always tell the story that he would put potatoes in his pockets and walk to school. And then he'd eat the potatoes for lunch. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
kind
they
of
could-
clever.
Yeah. On the way home. They probably went faster. But they would have had a couple miles to walk.
So that was their lunch then. Okay, that's interesting to know that they did end up eating them then. I found a recent advertisement for sleigh rides in Idaho. Guide peacefully through the winter wilderness of Garden Valley, Idaho, in an old-fashioned sleigh pulled by gorgeous black and white spotted draft horses. Listen to the jingle bells and join in the laughter and holiday fun. Observe wild elk close up. Follow your ride with a complimentary hot drink and snack at the lodge and cuddle up next to the warm fireplace. Add on a delicious, slow-cooked Dutch oven meal with live music during your dining experience. They even had a wheel-accessible sleigh. If we do not have enough snow for sleigh rides, we will convert our sleighs into wagons by taking the skis off and putting wheels on. And here are the prices. A large private ride, including one Christmas tree. I don't know if the Christmas tree is like in the wagon with you, or like you take it home. And so up to 12 people, $400. They discounted that price by $50 if you were there Monday through Thursday. Or you could have a small private ride up to 4 people and a Christmas tree for $300. In the winter, skating was enjoyed on the river and nearby ponds. The skating in the winter of 1863 was so good that a local paper noted, the sport has not been conned as of yore to the boys, but the ladies always on alert for new and harmless enjoyments, can be found making the evening hours musical with their laughter and songs. Later the paper added, "We were somewhat surprised to see the improvement the ladies have made in the art of skating during the short period which has elapsed since they began." 1921 Sentinel article. Some time ago, mention was made of the intention to create a municipal skating pond on the McKinsey lot on East Platte Street and Madison Avenue. But on the account of the shortage of water in the city, it was deemed advisable to abandon the project. However, it was thought by several of our businessmen that the Horseshoe Pond near Mill Creek could be flooded and a splendid rink provided for the young people. Does anybody know, was that ever done?
Yes.
It was. Okay. Sport on the river. The Maquoketa River at Maquoketa was a scene of much excitement on April 22nd, 1862, with the Great Eastern, a long-expected steamboat, arrived. The deck was soon covered with gazing urchins as well as many curious adults. And so now this picture, for some reason it got in the presentation, but then I don't have the notes to go with it, so I don't know if it's just something I pulled or if it's a local picture. But wading in the river in the early 1900s, I was talking to my cousin, and her mother just turned 100 years old, and she was talking about how she always talked so favorably of her brothers. And she said these were the same guys that used to throw her in the pond when she couldn't swim in deep water. The advent of this boat was soon followed in May 1802 by the coming of the steamboat Echo, shown in photo. The Echo was from Fulton, Illinois, a vessel which made several pleasure trips down the river with Maquoketa passengers. The excursion trip on May 12th began at 10 a.m., accompanied by much noise and merrymaking, and the boat went 10 miles down the river, giving confidence to many in her ability to run the river. A similar excursion took place in 1863 on Captain Joe Barnes' steamboat, when 100 passengers were carried down the river for a picnic. On the way back, the excursionists were given a chance to pick flowers while the boat stopped for wood. The paddle wheeler Forest Queen plied the Maquoketa River east of Bridgeport, circa 1910. The occasion was a Methodist picnic outing, and this photo was by Will Kundle. Bellevue and Sebula were Jackson County's ports of call for numerous paddle wheel steamboats before railroads undercut their importance in hauling freight. After that, steam packets and the passenger trade were important. It was always an occasion when the steamboat whistle blew below the riverbank. Sunday outings were a favorite pastime. Mississippi River excursion boats, such as the paddle wheeler of St. Paul, would take passengers for days outing from Bellevue and other points on the river. The steam packet David Tipton passes Bellevue on a 1911 trip. In the days before railroads and good highways, a local packet left Galena each morning and made round-trip connections for passengers at all points between Bellevue and Sebula. At Bellevue, stagecoaches met passengers bound for Maquoketa and beyond. Boating and swimming were enjoyed by the men and boys, some of whom went down the Maquoketa to the Mississippi and then down that river to Clinton, returning by rail. Railroad excursions. On the completion of the railroad connections with Davenport, Lyons, and Anamosa in 1870, pleasure excursions on the trains to these towns became numerous, and church societies and lodges often sponsored them to raise funds for a worthy cause, such as the Orphans' Home in Andrew. These excursions were bright spots in the lives of many young people, as they afforded new opportunities for forming new acquaintances as well as for visiting. Games, sports, sightseeing, shopping, eating, and drinking added to the novelty of riding on a railroad and made the hours pass happily. The first Lutheran orphans home in Iowa was located in Andrew. It was later moved to Mayberry. On May 25th, 1871, 310 people went to Davenport for a picnic on the island. In June, 15 cars carried 800 residents of Maquoketa to Davenport. The Methodist Church sponsored an excursion of 8 cars to Clinton in 1871, and that same summer, 500 persons took the same trip that were members of the Baptist Church. Sometimes these visits were returned, and a group of 500 from Lyons and Clinton visited Maquoketa in May 1871. The Maquoketa boys played a game of baseball for their entertainment. Train accidents in the early 1900s. Train wrecks always drew attention as spectators came to view the damage and destruction. The steam locomotive on the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad line derailed between Bellevue and Green Island in 1907. And this is the actual picture. You really probably can't see it that well. Results of a train wreck near Bellevue on April 23, 1908. The worst train accident in Jackson County occurred on the High Bridge Trestle near Washington Mills, west of Lamont. On February 22, 1907, a narrow gauge train derailed, killing 1 passenger and injuring others. The resulting lawsuit ended with a $4,250 award verdict by a federal court jury the next year in Dubuque. Dancing had many devotees in early Maquoketa, and dances were often sponsored by organizations such as the literary or temperance societies. Shade Burleson's farm, 6 miles west of town, was the scene of a feast and dance attended by many Maquoketa people on Christmas, 1854. His table groaned with the weight of oysters, turkeys, prairie chicken, and in truth, all the delicacies necessary to tempt the most fastidious epicure. The Sentinel stated in its next issue, after partaking of this feast, the guests danced until the late hour. And shown is that Shade Burleson farm, and the print below it reads, farm home in Jackson County, where pioneer Iowans celebrated Independence Day in 1844. And Carla Roberts and her husband, I believe, currently live in this home that belonged to his family. Shown is a photo of a prairie chicken. And I don't know, are there still prairie chickens, or did they come extinct? I don't know. There was dancing at Harris Hall. Public dances were held often in 1874 at Harris Hall, which was located in the northwest corner of Main and Platt Streets. And I know you've seen this picture many, many times. A large masquerade ball was held at Dr. Otto Schrader's home in 1869, when witches, gypsies, old-fashioned ladies, the Maid of Orleans, knights and clowns were among the guests. Masks were removed at 11:30 amid many surprises, and refreshments were then served. And so now this house is a von Schrader home, and I'm still unsure if that's where that ball was held, or if this was the home of Charles, who had a different home than, the other von Schrader. Does anyone know? Anybody familiar with the von Schrader? Hunting. Game for hunting and trapping was plentiful in the woods north of Maquoketa. A stand of virgin hard maple, 70 foot high, located 2 miles south of Fulton. This photo taken in the 1890s. When the pioneering families began settling Jackson County in the middle of the 1800s, 70% of the land was covered with virgin hardwood, forests of oak, maple, walnut, and other varieties. Although Jackson remains as one of the most forested counties in Iowa, much of it was cleared for cropland with the timber used in building homes and barns, and to feed the insatiable appetite of the Hurstville and other lime kilns. Frank Beaton and his uncle Frank Beaton pictured as they were boiling down maple syrup. The The site is the Beaton Farm, just north of the Maquoketa River on Old Highway 61. And that house is still standing, and Pat and Tony Tutterich are the current owners. Almost every day we hear of deer being seen in the timber near the city, and several have been shot, the local paper noted, in 1864. Wild turkeys and prairie chickens were plentiful as late as 1871, and pigeons were killed in great numbers at what was called the Great Pigeon Roost, 8 or 10 miles northwest of the city. In this sport, several women became very adept. Many wildcats were killed, not only for sport, but for the $1 bounty paid by the county for each scalp in the 1860s. Wolf hunting was still more remunerative, for the county paid $3 for each wolf scrap in 1856. And then that was raised to $5 the following year. Occasionally, a grand ring hunt was advertised in the newspaper for weeks ahead, and a large number of persons from the surrounding counties joined in. Numerous fishing parties went up the river, and the Sentinel of May 1st, 1856, comments on the pike weighing 12 to 15 pounds, which were as common as beefsteak and a great deal nicer and finer. Fishermen at Pinhook caught many suckers. And Pinhook, as you know, renamed Blakehurst, was a very popular fishing spot. Baseball was organized. Organized sports in Maquoketa had their beginnings in the 1870s, at about the time the first national baseball leagues were being formed. Iowa baseball fans were already numerous, and some of the larger towns having had baseball clubs since 1866. And in August 1870, a group of Maquoketa young men organized the Star Baseball Club. The first game was between members of the club for ice cream. But since some of the members were absent, a few outsiders also played. The score was 7-61. Yeah. A week later, the juniors of DeWitt eclipsed the Stars, 51-19. In 1872, two clubs, the Red Chiefs and the Young Americans, made up of the younger boys, defended Maquoketa's honor in baseball and took subscriptions for uniforms. Enthusiasm was everywhere, and many hours were spent in practice. The habit of playing catch with a baseball on Main Street is indulged by so many that it has become a nuisance, protested one local paper. Can't you find some more secluded place to indulge in this propensity if you must? Baseball continued to be a passion with small-town boys and men. The Bellevue American Legion team for 1926 included, so in the front row is Earl New, Mahon Heiler, and, oh yeah, okay, there are four there. The third one is Blackie Style and M. Birch. So does anybody know, is M. Birch connected with like Kellums and Birch?
How's it spelled?
Spelled the same way. Yeah. And then in the back row you have George Beeler, Henry Anderson, Henry Weber, J.C. Pard, Buddy was the manager, Oscar Tyson, and Lawton Railing. Now, they have it, the spelling is R-E-L-L-I-N-G, so I'm not sure if that's correct. Does anyone know any of these? Want to share anything?
I've heard of Henry Anderson.
You what?
Henry Anderson, I said the dark shirt.
Okay, so you know Henry Anderson, and he's the second from the left in the back row. So what did he do for a living, do you know?
He was a school superintendent.
Oh, he's superintendent. Okay, in Bellevue.
Remember? I haven't done
Oh, you don't know, yeah.
No, I'm not.
No?
Photo of the Maquoketa baseball town team, and this is from 1920. So in the left, I have in the back row is O.L. Frank, and he was a catcher. And the man beside him, I don't have the first name, but his last name was Bradley, and he played right field. Bill Johnson, left field. Bill Bowman, third base, Emil Kelly Rutenbeck, pitcher, and Frank Carson was the shortstop. And I'm sure most of you knew Frank Carson. And then beside Frank is Edmund Rich, and he was first base. In the front row, I just have the last name. It's Larry, spelled with 2 R's, and he was the manager. And beside him, last name Barnes, then Benedum, and then the last one is Roland Thomas, who was the umpire. And seated is Ted Berkeley, who played center field, and the bat boy is unidentified. And then again, there's a Larry, played second base. Native Maquoketa O.L. Frank had been captain of the University of Iowa baseball team and began medical practice in Maquoketa in 1919. And again, he's the one in the back row, farthest left. Frank Carson, who became a Maquoketa pharmacist, was also an Iowa baseball letterman. Edmund Rich was better known as a halfback on a top-ranked Iowa football team of that era. Does anybody know any more about those stories? Oh. You do? Okay, this one kills me. Okay, fast walking, that was the thing. Numerous entertainments held away for a time and then vanished. Such was the craze for fast walking, which swept Maquoketa and Iowa in 1879, when a sawdust track was made in the Opera House so that Mr. W.C. Brand could attempt to walk 50 miles in 8 hours, or in 50 minutes. Oh, to walk 50 miles in 8 hours and 50 minutes. On March 18th, when he made the attempt, he was forced to give up at the 40th mile, and then 20 minutes behind schedule. 3 weeks later, he tried again and failed. But in May, he did walk 50 miles in 8 hours, 25 minutes, 4 seconds, which was acclaimed the best record in the state. Madame Dupree, a French walker, went 110 miles in 26 hours on the Maquoketa track, but received little compensation for this feat, as interest in walking records had dwindled. Okay, croquet, test your knowledge. And I think I maybe, when we were talking about some things, gave away an answer. What do you hit the ball with?
Mallet.
Yep, you are right. And this photo is of a 19th century mallet. And here's a photo of some more vintage mallets and balls. And those look very similar to the ones that we have on display. What are the hoops called?
Wickets.
Ah, wickets. Good job. These are the wickets. Shown are vintage cast iron wickets. Before outdoor electricity, a product was marketed that sat on top of the hoop, and a candle would be inserted in the top. And I thought about, you see the pictures of these women playing croquet with those big, long skirts? And then you've got all these candles. I wonder how many accidents there were. What is it called when you get to hit another ball?
Send it. Send it?
But they're trying. Now I thought it'd be pronounced roquette, but it's
Okay.
roquet. I think it's roquette.
You know how you send it?
Yeah,
Your
you
ball.
send it.
You just put your ball where you want to be and then take the mallet and hit the ball.
I always hated that when somebody did that to
I
me.
did too, but I sure like to do it though.
What is it called when the ball passed through all the wickets, but it didn't hit the starting post? Rover. What is the rectangular plot of lawn, approximately 72 by 40 called? So what you play the game on?
Field?
court layout. And when I look at that, and you see the direction of the arrows, and I'm thinking, I don't know that we played croquet that way. Did you? You played it that way? It just looks different than I remember. Yeah, because you're kind of like going.
That looks too confusing.
When croquet was first introduced, the Reverend Mr. Skinner, presiding Methodist elder of this district, took up strong grounds against it. But a few years later, Henry Ward Beecher upheld the game, and by 1873, even the strictest moralists were sanctioning it, except on Sundays. Shown on right is the first Methodist church that was in use until 1875. The building stood on the spot later occupied by the Mitchell Maskery Mill. Photo on left shows a log cabin built by J. Goodnow in 1838. It was used for many purposes, including Methodist and congregational services, prior to churches being built. Henry Ward Beecher was a congregational clergyman, social reformer, and speaker. He supported the abolition of slavery. He was also a supporter of social reform and women's suffrage and temperance. Croquet is an exciting game, intensely exciting, a game in which every muscle of the body and every faculty of the mind is strained to the utmost. A writer of those days said, "Croquet has been called lawn billiards." An advertisement shown reads, "There is more science to the game than most people realize. Get a set and try it." Now, you think about those wine and sip parties that, were so popular a few years back. And so this is a wine and wicket party. Croquet made its appearance in about 1870, and enthusiasm ran high for several summers. As it was suitable for warm moonlight evenings, the progressive stores soon began to advertise croquet arches fitted with sockets for candles, and I guess I mentioned that earlier. And the advertisement says, "Sterling Vineyards presents ladies croquet, wine and wicket parties, gentlemen by invitation only." Croquet was once an Olympic sport. It featured at the Summer of Olympics in Paris in 1900 with just 10 competitors, all French except for one Belgian. And it was in the 1904 Olympics as well. It was the first Olympic sport to include women. At the Olympics, held over 3 weeks, it attracted no spectators, beyond one elderly Englishman. Farm machinery. Another type of recreation came with the invention of farm machinery. In 1862, a contest took place in the J.E. Goodnow Meadow, in which 3 mowing machines, the J.H. Manny, the Ohio Chief, and the Kirby, competed for first place in performance. The judges were unable to decide which machine did the best work, and the opinion of the spectators was too divided. Demonstrations of new reapers, hay rakes, hay loaders, and even washing machines attracted many curious spectators. Horse-drawn mowing machine. Shown is a horse-drawn mowing machine, and I'm unsure of the brand. Anybody know maybe anything about this? Do we have one of these in our machine shop? Saloons. Okay, so we get to this. I guess I wouldn't have thought saloons as being a sport. But the writer of this article did, so I'm sure maybe that's how some of the men justified it, that it's a sport, The saloons, located mostly on West Platte Street, had a large patronage, and numerous rows on that street were a result. Shown is a picture of Maquoketa's The Two Freds Saloon that operated prior to the 1920s Prohibition days. And on the awning it reads, Sunnyside Saloon. I don't see Don in the audience, but I don't know where this is located. Obviously with the windows, none of our buildings, look like that anymore, so. Does someone knows? This saloon of the 1880s was located on 114 West Platte Street, which is kind of across from where Nissen Cabin on Platte Street is, or actually they've moved, but where they were. Frank Beaton is shown behind the bar with Roy Beaton, then a child. The side table carried free snacks for drink customers. Loafers became so bothersome in grocery stores that one merchant put up the sign, "Loafers will please keep out from behind the counter and go home to their meals." That many of these unemployed were confirmed idlers whose only occupation was whittling is evidenced in 1871 by the newspaper's comment. The crowd of whittlers is not much lessened even now, when harvest hands are in demand at high prices. Boxes do not last more than half a day longer than usual. So I don't know what was meant by that. The boxes didn't last, so that they were stealing boxes to whittle? I don't.
Could that be well, you've heard of tramp art, that's made out of.
Oh, the tramp art.
Cigar boxes,
Okay.
maybe that's what they're talking about.
Probably wooden boxes.
Oh, wooden crates.
The wooden crates. Okay. And then I think Nancy showed this photo too, but this is the photo in Matt's Wine Cellar and located at 144 South Main Street, and still what it looks like today. So when we were restoring this building, we left that part of the plaster that says no loafing here. The word no is faded and it's kind of barely visible, but here's a close-up slide of it. You can kind of barely make out that no at the top. And so that was, as Nancy had mentioned in her presentation, about when they had businesses, downstairs. That was probably, people had entered, and, it was a business. There was a business located there in the basement.
Makes sense now.
That evidently had a problem with loafers.
Now I know what it is. What a loafer is.
Saturday auctions. Saturdays were often enlivened in the 70s by auction sales of household goods, held on the corner of Main and Platte Streets. So where would that building be if it was on the corner of Main and Platte? Anybody have any idea? Because it doesn't look like any of the buildings. When the household effects of people who were going west were sold, already the course of empire was taking its way westward from Maquoketa. For while settlers were still pouring in from the east, some of the most adventurous were leaving for more westerly points to seek their fortunes. And this picture, actually, this is not the actual picture. It is a picture from somewhere where they were having an auction. It says Hawkeye Auction Store. Sorry, sometimes I make these up like months and months ago, and then I kind of forget a little bit about what I've written down. And so credits to The Early History of Maquoketa, Iowa by Helen Stoddard, July 1933. So she's the one that got, the saloons, the drinking was a sport, which I always kind of pictured Helen as probably being able to teach children, maybe. Anyone have any questions on anything? Want to add anything to anything else about things with sports in the older days?
I like you talking about croquet.
Croquet.
It took a while for it to sink in, because you really hit on that, no pun intended. But just thinking back to my grandpa's farm, we used to play a lot as kids, croquet. And he had a croquet set. I don't know where he got it, but we had a lot of fun.
So are you related to the guy that was doing Hurstville's court for the speeders? Is that a relation of yours?
I don't know. That's the NIM side probably. If it's a NIM, it's probably related.
Okay.
But the grandpa's farm, my mom's side, Yarland, Truman Yarland, he's got a croquet set from somewhere, and just played that all the time.
We-
That's where my Uncle Bob was, you know Bob Foster.
Sure.
On that farm, there we used to play like that.
Yeah, we played a lot of croquet. I can't say I was ever very good at it, because my brothers and sisters always could hit that ball and send my ball. Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for coming, and I don't know, has the cookie walk, has that already started?
Starts at 1.
1 o'clock, so surprisingly, yeah, I got done 10 minutes early. That doesn't usually happen. So that makes up for the ones that, went over, averages out, I guess. Thank you.